Welcome to The Explainer. We're skipping the usual agenda today because, honestly, I want to preserve a couple of really fascinating plot twists we have coming up. Instead, I want you to just take a second and think about how you consume news right now. If you're anything like the rest of us, you're probably experiencing a very universal frustration, that endless, infinite doom scroll, right? Every news product today is essentially just this vertical river of headlines. It's exhausting. And when every feed looks exactly the same, well, the feed itself kind of stops holding any real value. But today, we're looking at a system called Stenvryk, which proposes a radical, entirely different approach.
Okay, let's dive into this. On one side, we have the status quo, the list. It's vertical, it's endless, and because it's organized strictly by recency, meaning the absolute newest stuff is just slapped right at the top, it completely strips away vital context. It's just a flat stream. But on the other side, we have Stenvryk's alternative, the globe. This is a geography-first approach, where news is clustered and context-rich. In a market where news aggregation has totally collapsed into these interchangeable, boring feeds, Stenvryk makes the argument that the interface itself is the differentiation. It's not just, a new skin on the same old list. It is a fundamentally new organizing principle.
And this quote absolutely brilliantly captures the core philosophy of the whole project. Not what is the news, but where is it happening? Just think about that shift for a second. A traditional feed answers what's newest, but honestly, that's not always the question we're actually trying to ask. In our highly connected world, a story breaking in one city can completely reshape markets, disrupt supply chains, and literally alter politics 3 time zones away. Changing the organizing principle from simple recency to location provides immediate vital context. Because, place is context. Now, to really understand the massive scale of what we're dealing with here, take a look at this number, 1,700. That is roughly the number of live, active stories circulating through the Stenvryk system at any given moment. Imagine putting 1,700 stories into a standard vertical feed. No way, right? It'd be completely unreadable. It's just pure noise. You would scroll forever and retain absolutely nothing. So the real challenge isn't finding the news, it's organizing it in a way that the human brain can actually reason about. And that brings us to how Stenvryk handles that massive volume. It actually maps those 1,700 live stories onto a rotating 3D globe, specifically anchoring them across 49 distinct city hubs. So instead of mindlessly scrolling, you spin the world. The news literally organizes itself by place. You can immediately see what's breaking in Tokyo, what's developing in Berlin, and exactly where thematic clusters are forming tonight. It turns a flat stream into a geographic map where you can actually spot gaps, patterns, and regions that are heating up. But, of course, a pretty 3D globe alone doesn't mean much without the mechanics powering it. Section 1. Beneath the surface, the engine. To really understand how this works, we kind of have to look beneath the surface of the iceberg. What makes this an actual functioning system is the autonomous trend engine running quietly in the background. It executes these 3 steps continuously, totally without human intervention. First, it surfaces stories from across the web. Second, it intelligently clusters them into coherent topics. And third, it pins each of those clusters to the correct city hub. There's no giant newsroom headcount desperately refreshing a dashboard here. This autonomous engine is literally the only way you can keep 1,700 live stories across 49 hubs perfectly current. Now, the architecture of this back-end engine is incredibly strategic. It's designed to be provider agnostic and local first. And what that means in plain English is that the clustering and ranking logic aren't welded to a single super expensive AI model from some massive tech giant. By staying provider agnostic, the system remains flexible. And by being local first, it's designed to run the heavy algorithmic lifting wherever compute happens to be cheapest. Now, what's really interesting about this next point, and honestly, brace yourself for the real shocker here, is €0. Yep, that is the monthly production run cost for this live, continuously updating 60 frames per second 3D news globe. It rounds down to roughly 0. In a technology landscape where insane infrastructure costs regularly kill early-stage experiments before they ever even find their footing, this number is just almost unbelievable. Let's break down exactly how they achieved that $0 run cost, because it's absolutely brilliant. First up, the heavy 3D rendering of the globe, that actually happens client-side. So that means your computer is doing the heavy lifting right in the web browser, not some remote server that charges by the request. Second, that autonomous trend engine we just talked about, it runs on owned compute hardware. So
So the marginal cost to keep the whole system analyzing and pinning news is literally just the electricity required to power the machine. There is no metered cloud server bill ticking up every single time someone spins the globe.
And the origin story makes this even wilder. Stenvryk didn't start as some massive, heavily funded software project. Actually, scratch that. It was essentially just a throwaway experiment. It began as a Claude design prototype, literally just a news globe demo, built by a non-developer using agentic AI. You know, AI tools that can execute tasks independently. It was the exact kind of prototype you usually admire once and then completely forget about. But because the cost of trying it out was almost nothing, this cheap little experiment was able to graduate straight into a production environment without needing a huge team or massive rebuild the world budget. And this brilliantly illustrates the real genius of the Stenvryk model. It's basically a Trojan horse strategy. It is one single bill doing two entirely different jobs. On the front end, you have this incredibly engaging consumer toy, a beautiful 3D globe that people just love to play with, which effectively gives them free distribution. But on the back end, that exact same engine is silently functioning as a powerful trend detection signal, creating invaluable market intelligence. So let's talk about that second job. Having an autonomous engine continuously detecting which stories are clustering, where they're happening, and how fast they're growing, that is a massive strategic asset. It acts as a leading indicator. Knowing that a specific topic is suddenly heating up in a particular region, well before it becomes obvious to everyone else, is highly valuable intelligence. This signal actually feeds back into a broader content network, informing decisions on what to cover and identifying regional demand long before traditional metrics would ever catch it. Section 2. The outlook. Bull versus bearer.
All right, let's resurface and look at the whole picture objectively. On the bear side, there are very real risks here. A striking interface might just be a novelty that hides thin utility, right? Maybe people spin the globe once, say, oh, neat, and just go right back to their endless vertical lists. There are also valid functional concerns regarding AI miscategorizations. I mean, an autonomous engine might miscluster or incorrectly amplify data points. Plus, you have the wildly complex domain of data attribution and sourcing rules, and frankly, the whole thing is totally unproven at mass scale. But look at the bull case. You have a genuinely differentiated user interface in a completely commoditized market. And because the run cost is effectively zero, it acts as a zero-cost strategic hedge. It buys itself time to find an audience. Even if the consumer globe never becomes a massive, widespread hit, that back-end trend engine makes it an unkillable portfolio asset that totally pays for itself in market intelligence.
So the crucial point is, we do have to remember the current reality of this project. Stenvryk is presently in closed beta. The model is completely unproven at scale, and its availability is deliberately limited right now. The features we've discussed, the way it clusters data, the interface itself, all of these behaviors may change as it evolves. It is very much an early-stage experiment, which leaves us with the ultimate question. The interface makes a really compelling argument that place is context, and that mapping information is just infinitely better than blindly scrolling through it. But, habits are incredibly hard to break. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. Will geography actually change how you read the news? Or are we permanently addicted to the endless vertical scroll?